The 10,000 Doors of January is not at all what I expected it to be. And I'm like, who's this other person? Like, what is this academic study in here? What are these footnotes? There's so much just like, so much cool magical stuff happening. Be like, that cannot be the ending for that character. You're telling me this character did what to this character? If the dog dies, I am going to riot. I'm just gonna say, like, the world's actually really mean to, like, people like her and people like her friends and all that. I'm really excited to read this book. It's very different, I think, than the majority of the books I read. This one feels a little bit more like the Book of Doors that I read last year. It just seems like magical and kind of gothic, which I think is cool. And this is one of the books that I also got for Christmas, so it was on my TBR and I've been wanting to read it for a while. So from my understanding, The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Haro is about our main character, January, and she's the ward for some person, I'm not entirely sure, I think it's like a grandfather or something. She ends up in this like really expensive mansion with all these antiques and stuff, and she really doesn't feel like she belongs there. And that's when she discovers a book that lets her basically go from, like, I don't know how, if this is actually what it is, this is what I think it is that she goes through these books and gets to experience other people's stories. And it's a story of like self-discovery and traveling and magic and all of that stuff. So it sounds really fun. It honestly sounds kind of cozy, and I expect it to be pretty emotional for some reason. Like, yeah, but yeah, it sounds really cool. I really love the cover of this book, and yeah, I'm just pretty excited. So without further ado, let's read The 10,000 Doors of January. So I'm now a little bit more than 100 pages into The 10,000 Doors of January, and here are my thoughts so far. Alex E. Haro's writing is so beautiful, and it's very like poetic and fluffy, but also at the same time it feels like you're reading something that happened like historically at the same time. And it's hard to explain, but like it just seems to be like the type of writing that she has. When I read Starling House, it's really cool because you're reading it and there's like kind of these little like footnotes and stuff, and the same thing is in this book. And so it does feel like in certain chapters that you're actually reading like an academic paper about the study of all the 10,000 doors, and like it's really cool. So the story actually follows two characters. I thought it was just going to be about January, but there is a kind of separate story that's happening at the same time with a woman named Adelaide who goes by Aid. And so what we've got is January, who has grown up, and this is like early 1900s time period, and she is like mixed race. And so people don't really know where she belongs because she's kind of like the ward of this really rich archaeologist guy. So her dad is always out looking for artifacts and stuff, and so she pretty much lives in this like mansion with this guy. And this guy has told her before that she's like a very unique specimen, which just like, don't call people specimens. But he's also like, he provided her with a home and education and food and like all of this. So she doesn't really know where she belongs. She doesn't really know, like she's always told that she needs to be a good girl / don't show any emotions, don't stand up for yourself, that kind of stuff. And so the story starts off when she's really, really young and she discovers a door, but she doesn't go through this door, but she does get this little kind of golden coin from the door, but she could smell like the breeze of like the sea and the salt water and all of that. And then she closes the door, and when she goes back, the door is gone. And her ward, Mr. Locke, is like, you have to be a good girl, like stop with these childish antics and all this stuff. And so after that, she's basically like not allowed to have an imagination, and she has to be raised to be this perfect good little girl. And because her father is pretty much not there because he's always out searching for these things for Mr. Ward so they can kind of do their archaeology study stuff, she's very, very, very lonely. The only person she really has is like one of the boys who works at the grocery, and he kind of goes door to door selling like milk and groceries and all that stuff. And they used to be friends when she was younger, but now that she has to be a proper woman, she's not allowed to hang out with the likes of him because he's darker skinned. And so this is something I didn't really realize that was going to be in the book, and like the struggles that the character has as somebody who's like a mixed race, and people don't really know what to do with her because she's mixed race, but she's treated like a white person. So following January, and she's just like so lonely and it's really sad, and so she turns to books, and she ends up finding this book called The 10,000 Doors, and this is the academic kind of study that someone has investigated all of these different types of doors, and this is kind of how we meet our other main character. And so in the chapters where we learn about Aid is actually January reading this book. It's kind of funny because it's like, this is the book, but it's a book within a book. And so when January is reading The 10,000 Doors, she is reading the academic study about Aid. And Aid's story is very similar to January's in a way, except that Aid didn't have any education or anything. She was brought up in the late 1800s, and she didn't really belong anywhere, and she always would just kind of like run wild and explore, and she ends up meeting this, what she calls the ghost boy. And he's a boy who had come through a door. They spend an entire day and evening together. She kisses him, and then he goes and says that he'll see her in 3 more days. He goes to the door. By the time she goes there, the door is gone. And so this character isn't sure, like, did she make that up? Did she not make that up? She's also told very similarly, like, you need to be a proper woman kind of stuff that's like drilled into her, and that she can't have this kind of imagination. Similarly, like you see the foils between the two characters for January and Aid. And so Aid's character, she grows up, and through this academic study, which is cool because this guy, he wrote this thing about all the doors in his research, and he's basically been tracking Aid and all of the different doors that she's discovered and like the paths that she's walked and stuff. And so she ends up spending basically her adult life looking for different doors and just trying to find her ghost boy. And so that's where we're at right now, where it's like these 2 different stories, but it's our character. Like, we're reading the book about a character who's reading a book about a character. So it's really interesting. And I wonder if these 2 characters will eventually end up in the same area by like the same door, and what that's gonna look like. Something else I really like about this book is the way that it's depicting grief as like this oily black something that the character doesn't have a proper name for, but she can feel it constantly like in her, and it just doesn't let up, and like she's trying to distract herself, but it's just always there. And I think that it was just like a really good way for a character who's going through something really difficult without knowing the name for it. And like we as readers, we know exactly what she's talking about. And I just think that it's really, really well done and well executed. And the writing is just like, it's good. I will admit though, it did take me a little while to understand like where this book was going. Like I would say maybe the first 70, 80 pages, I was like, okay, this is like a story about January, and I'm like, who is this other person? Like, what is this academic study in here? What are these footnotes? And then I realized it's kind of like just like 2 stories within the story. But yeah, it was a little bit hard at first, but now I'm like really into it, and I'm excited to see where the rest of this book goes. So I will update you around the halfway mark. So I will see you then. So I'm definitely more than halfway through the 10,000 Doors of January, and oh my goodness, this book is really picked up. There's so much just like, so much cool magical stuff happening. While I was reading this book, I wasn't sure like when I started it, and like I was a bit confused and stuff, if this was actually going to be a magical book, because it was like, maybe it meant on like the summary on the back that her reading the book is like her magical escape. But no, don't worry. There are actual doors that the characters can go through that lead to different worlds. There's like 10,000 different doors, and they're all different. There's like a world of like leopard women who are like kind of like werewolf leopards, leopards, and so they can turn into leopards, and they can also be humans. And so there's just a whole world for them. There is a world where it's just like really, really icy and cold. There's a world where just a bunch of kind of misfitty people end up, like people who were slaves or people who were homeless and all that, and they end up kind of in this world and create their own kind of better world in that world. So there's all these doors, and then there are these people who close the doors. So the doors are opening, but then there's these people, like this society of people that close the doors forever. So everybody's trapped in there, or they can't get out and they can't get in. So that's kind of a big thing that's going on in the book, and it's really cool. I will say that there is definitely, like, there should have been some kind of trigger warning for SH and mental health institutions in this book, because I didn't know about that, and I was just like, whoa, like what? What's going on? Didn't expect that. So just kind of throwing that out there, that is in this book, which was surprising. But I think what's really interesting about this book is, like, it feels like, I mean, I obviously did not exist in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but the way that the author has kind of like written this, it really does feel like I am there, and I can smell it and see it and feel it and just kind of understand the character, because like our main character, January, she's mixed race, but she was raised by pretty much like a rich white man, and so she was kind of raised like that. And although people kind of saw her as like a pet or like a specimen, she hasn't learned the hardships of people in that time who have gone through different kind of living situations. And so it's interesting when she meets other characters and she's just like, wait, what? Like when she's outside of the world, hey, the world's actually really mean to like people like her and people like her friends and all that. And it's also cool that there was like one of these worlds with the Scaller where racism didn't exist. And so when he went into a different world, suddenly people were being racist. He's like, whoa, like, what is going on? Why am I in jail for looking at somebody? So that was interesting. Like, I didn't expect those kind of like themes in the book, but I'm really happy that they're in there. It does a really good job in having it in the book and helping you understand the time period with, of course, that magical twist of all these cool magical doors. There's also this really cute dog named Sinbad, which they just call Bad for short. And I love him. He's January's pretty much like best friend, and they go on adventures together, and like, he's so good. But if the dog dies, I am going to riot. I'm just gonna say, like, so yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this book, and I did not want to put it down because I was like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Like, is she gonna go through the doors? What's gonna happen here? What's gonna happen there? And there's like romance and magic, and there's just so much fun stuff happening in this book. So yeah, I'm going to continue to read the 10,000 Doors of January, and I will update you when I finish the book, so I will see you then with my final thoughts. I just finished the 10,000 Doors of January, and this book took me through like an emotional roller coaster. I'm just like constantly flipping the page. I'm like, what's gonna happen with January? Like, what's happening with these characters and this character? And like, do we ever know what happens with Aunt Lizzie? I just want to know. Like, my heart, at least the dog was okay. Like, this isn't, I mean, it's a bit of a spoiler, but honestly, like, people want to know. Was the dog okay? The dog was okay. The dog does get hurt, but the dog is okay. For me, this story really, really picked up. There was just like so much happening. It was so fast paced. There was so much emotional turmoil and like not knowing like, is this character dead? Is this character alive? Like, is this character lost? Are we ever gonna see this character again? What is the outcome for all of these characters? You're telling me this character did what to this character? Like, there is so many fun things that happened in this book. I just wish that the fun stuff started way earlier, because the pacing of this book was a little bit strange, where I really, really felt like it was dragging on for like the first 150 pages maybe. But then once you get past that and like you understand what the 1,000 Doors book is and how January's story is related to it, once that's clear, the rest of the story is just smooth sailing. No pun intended, because there's a lot of sailing in this book. But yeah, I really liked all of the questions that were asked in the book, especially like when it came to January being raised as like a good girl, and then kind of like the end. And it's like, it makes you wonder like how much of that was actually January and how much of it wasn't, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I like that it's not answered though. There's a lot of intentionally unanswered questions that are kind of left up to you as the reader to decide like what happened. Like for me, I'm imagining people are visiting Aunt Lizzie like every single day, because otherwise it just breaks my heart and makes me really, really sad. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of cool things like that. There was a lot of like discussion questions on the back of the book as well, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm so happy that there was that epilogue, because if that epilogue did not happen, I would feel so empty inside. Be like, that cannot be the ending for that character. But the epilogue saved the day, so I'm very happy about that. I think for me, something else I really liked is just the growth of January's character and how it took such an interesting direction. And then of course, like the big reveals and stuff that happened towards the end, I thought that that was really good. And just like the tension and the love that I had for these characters was really good, and I just had a really good time. So today we are going to be awarding the 10,000 Doors of January a total of 3.5 stars. It was almost a 4-star book, but because of how slow the pacing was at the beginning of the book, how I found it really hard at first to actually get into it and just like figure out what is happening. I had like no context. I was really confused because I thought it was going to be like girl finds secret doors in the manor that she's living in. And so that's what I thought it was. So when it wasn't that, I was like, okay, wait, where is the story going? But I actually like a lot where the story did end up going. And I think if I knew it, maybe it would increase it to a 4, but I do still think like the beginning of this book was just too slow. Like the events didn't happen. Like that inciting incident, I feel like should have happened way earlier than it actually did. And yeah, but aside from that, I liked everything else a lot. I thought it was really well written. At first, again, it was like really hard to be like, what's going on? But it all made sense. And I think this is one of those books that you appreciate if you do another reread of it. Like if you do a reread of this book, or if you just kind of think about how this book was done, it's just very cleverly done. And yeah, I think it's one of those books that maybe I'll look back and I'll give it a higher rating after I let it absorb and I think about it, because my heart still aches from finishing this book, and that's usually a sign that I may have to increase my rating. But for now, we're going to be stopping at a 3.5 stars. I'll let you know what I give it at my end of book month wrap up. So the next book that I'm going to be reading is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, and I'm really excited for this book. The second book does come out February of this year, so if I really enjoy this book, which I have a gut feeling that I will, that I won't have to wait super long to read the next book. So yeah, I'm really excited about this book. So this is what I will be reading next. So if you're interested in watching me read Heartless Hunter or any other book that happens to be on my never-ending TBR, definitely hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!